The cemetery was silent, covered in early morning fog, until a sudden scraping sound shattered the peace. A dog, digging. Bisaída grave. Not just any dig, it was frantic, desperate, as if time was running out. When officers arrived and saw what he uncovered, they lost their breath. The sun had barely stretched its first rays when Officer Sarah Collins stepped out of her patrol car. Moist air wrapped around her uniform as she heard it again. Scrape, scrape, scrape. A low, frantic sound of paws ripping into the dirt. She followed the noise between rows of weathered tombstones until she saw him. A skinny German shepherd, mud on his legs, ribs showing, fur trembling, digging like his life depended on it. His paws were bleeding. He didn't stop. Sarah froze. Hey, boy, she whispered softly, hands raised. It's okay, easy. But the dog didn't stop. He didn't even look at her. He only dug faster, whining with every breath, dirt flying behind him. It wasn't random digging. It was at a grave. A fresh one. Sarah glanced at the stone. Emily Hayes, 1990 to 2025. Beloved daughter, sister, friend. Her stomach tightened. Why here? Why this grave? She murmured. The dog suddenly let out a gut-wrenching howl that echoed across the cemetery. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She stepped closer, and then she saw it. Beside the grave, partially buried under loose dirt, a small, torn piece of blue fabric. A baby blanket. Sarah called dispatch. Send backup. Possible grave tampering, but something's off. Really off. Before she could finish, the dog jumped back into digging, ignoring his own exhaustion. Tears, actual tears, streaked through the dirt on his face. He kept pushing his paws deeper until his nails scraped wood. A coffin. Fresh. Shallow. It hit Sarah like a punch. He wasn't trying to destroy anything. He was trying to reach someone. Officer Mark Daniels arrived moments later. Where's the disturbance? He asked, catching his breath. Sarah pointed. Daniels' eyes widened. The dog did all this. Sarah nodded. He hasn't stopped since I got here. Daniels stepped forward carefully. Hey, buddy. What are you looking for? He asked, his voice unusually soft. The dog stopped, for the first time, and looked up at Daniels. Not threatening. Not scared. Just broken. He let out a soft whine and placed his paw on the coffin lid. Sarah whispered, He's trying to show us something. The dog moved aside, giving them space. It was almost as if he understood. Now it's your turn. Daniels examined the headstone again. Emily Hayes, age 35, died last week. Cause of death unknown. Sarah frowned. Unknown? That's strange. Daniels checked the cemetery log on his tablet. She was buried in a hurry, he added. Family refused a full funeral. Only one brother signed the paperwork. No autopsy. Sarah felt a chill crawl up her spine. That's odd. The dog suddenly nudged the blanket piece toward her. She kneeled down and picked it up. It smelled faintly of baby powder. Her heart dropped. Was Emily a mother? She whispered. Daniels checked. No records of that. Sarah looked at the dog. His eyes were pleading. Desperate. Something's missing, she said. He's trying to tell us. The dog stepped back from the grave and, for the first time, lifted his front paw. A deep scar ran across it. Sarah swallowed. This dog has been through something. Daniels crouched and whispered, Where's your owner, boy? At that, the dog slowly turned his head toward Emily's name on the headstone, and then he rested his paw on the grave. Both officers froze. No, Sarah whispered. Emily was his owner. The dog whined softly, confirming it. Suddenly everything made sense. Why he stayed, why he dug, why he cried. But there was still one question that refused to leave Sarah's mind. Was he trying to reach inside the grave? Daniels knelt beside the grave and brushed away some loose soil. His hand hit something small, cold, metallic. He picked it up. It was a silver locket, engraved with 2 letters. E-L. Sarah opened it. Inside were 2 pictures. Heavy check mark, Emily. Heavy check mark, a newborn baby. Sarah's breath caught. Oh my God, she was a mother. Daniels whispered. Then where's the baby? Before either could speak, the dog barked sharply 3 times and then ran toward the edge of the cemetery, looking back at them, urging them to follow. Daniel stood. He wants us to see something. Sarah nodded. let's go. But before they left, she turned back one last time, staring at Emily's grave. If she was a mother, she whispered, then who buried her? And where's the child? And why? Why was this dog willing to dig his paws to the bone to uncover the truth? Sarah looked at the dog, sprinting ahead. Whatever was waiting was big, dark, and about to be revealed. Officer Daniel Reed had seen strange things in his 12 years on the force, but nothing like this. For 3 nights straight, the same black and tan dog returned to the graveyard. He did not bark, he did not howl, he did not cause trouble. He just dug, quietly, desperately, with a trembling urgency that shook everyone who watched. Tonight, Daniel was determined to get answers. The moment he stepped out of his cruiser, the cold wind cut across his face. The moon hung low, turning the entire cemetery silver. And right there, beside an old, unmarked grave, the dog was already waiting, covered in dirt, paws bleeding, chest rising and falling with exhaustion. But the moment he saw Daniel, the dog backed away, not to run, but as if he wanted the officer to look, to see what he had been trying to show them all along. Daniel turned on his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness and onto the soil, and his heart skipped. There, beneath the loose dirt, lay a torn piece of pink cloth. Not old, not decayed, fresh, and woven into the edge, a tiny cartoon unicorn, the kind sewn onto a child's sweater. Daniel froze. His voice cracked as he radioed in. Dispatch, we may have a missing child situation. But before he could finish, the dog shoved his nose against the ground again, whining hard, nudging the earth like he was begging Daniel to hurry. Okay, boy. Okay. Show me, Daniel whispered. And then the dog did something unbelievable. He grabbed Daniel's sleeve and pulled. Not aggressively, not violently, just enough to guide him. As the dog led him away from the grave site, Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. His flashlight bounced across dozens of old headstones until the dog reached a tall willow tree. Its branches swayed like they were whispering warnings. That is when Daniel saw it. A tiny shoe, half buried under leaves. Pink, with a unicorn charm that matched the cloth. His stomach dropped. No, no, please no. He tore through the leaves with his hands, his breath shaking. The dog stood behind him, whining so hard his voice cracked, paws shifting anxiously, tail tucked. Daniel found a footprint next. Small, a child's, leading deeper into the woods behind the cemetery. Dispatch, I need backup and a K-9 rescue team. We may have a live child in the woods. I repeat, possible live child. But the dog did not wait for backup. He bolted, straight into the darkness. Hey, buddy, wait, Daniel shouted, but the dog vanished between the trees. Daniel chased after him, branches whipping his arms, his boots sinking in wet mud. For a moment, all he could hear was his own breathing, fast, uneven, panicked. And then, the bark, short, sharp, urgent. Daniel sprinted toward it. When he broke through the clearing, the moon lit the scene enough to steal the breath from his lungs. There, curled beside a fallen tree, was a little girl, no older than 6. Her face pale, her lips trembling, her clothes torn and muddy. Her tiny arm was wrapped protectively around a small stuffed bear, and the dog stood over her, guarding her, like he had been doing for days. Daniel dropped to his knees. Sweetheart, can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered. She whispered one word. Cold. Daniel immediately shrugged off his jacket, wrapping it around her small body. You're safe now, I promise. But when he looked up at the dog, his heart twisted. The dog was shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion. His paws were raw from digging. His fur was soaked from the storm earlier. He had been keeping her alive, keeping her warm, digging for help because no one else had come. Backup arrived minutes later, lights flashing through the trees. Paramedics lifted the child onto a stretcher. She clung weakly to Daniel's jacket, eyes half open. But then something incredible happened. The girl lifted her hand and pointed at the dog. The paramedic paused. Do you know him? Her lips moved. He stayed with me. He did not let the bad man take me again. Daniel's blood ran cold. The bad man. But the girl was slipping into sleep again. Paramedics rushed her away. Daniel turned to the dog. You saved her, didn't you?" The dog lowered his head, as if he was saying, yes, but there was more, something he still had not shown them. He nudged Daniel's hand, then turned toward the far side of the clearing. Then he barked once, sharp, calling him. Daniel followed as the dog led him down a narrow path. The air grew colder, the trees darker, and then Daniel saw another disturbance in the dirt, another shallow grave. But this one looked recently dug. His breath stilled. "Dear God," he whispered. This was not just a lost child case. This was something much darker. The dog began scratching the ground again, desperate, frantic, terrified, like he wanted Daniel to see what was underneath. Daniel's hands shook as he touched his radio. "Dispatch. I need detectives at my location ASAP. I think we have multiple victims." The dog suddenly froze. His ears perked. His body stiffened. Something or someone was close. Daniel slowly turned. Branches snapped behind him. Leaves crunched. Someone was watching them. Someone who did not want that grave uncovered. The dog growled low. A deep, dangerous rumble. Daniel whispered, "Stay behind me." But the dog took a step forward, because he recognized the scent. He had smelled it before, the night the little girl disappeared. And that was when a shadow stepped out from behind the trees. Tall, heavy boots, hood pulled low. This was the man the girl had been running from. And when Daniel finally saw his face, his heart slammed into his ribs, because he recognized him too. Officer Daniel Reed felt his breath freeze as the hooded man stepped into the moonlight. Not a stranger, not a drifter, not a random monster. It was Mark Sullivan, a former cemetery groundskeeper, fired months ago for violent behavior, arrested twice for trespassing, known for his temper, and for wandering the graveyard at night long after he lost his job. Daniel had questioned him once before, but he never imagined this. The dog, mud-covered, shaking, bleeding, growled with a sound Daniel had never heard from an animal before. It was not fear. It was recognition. The man smirked. "So the mutt brought you here." Daniel tightened his grip on his holster. "Do not move, Mark." Mark shrugged, his voice cold, empty. "You should have stayed out of this." I was almost finished. Finished. That word sliced straight into Daniel's chest. "What did you do to that little girl?" Daniel shouted. Mark tilted his head as if bored. "She was in the wrong place. Wrong time. But she survived." His eyes narrowed. "Can't say the same for the others." Daniel's heart dropped. "Others?" Before he could answer, Mark stepped toward the second mound of disturbed dirt, the shallow grave the dog had been digging toward. And then the dog snapped. He lunged, not out of rage, but to protect Daniel. Mark swung a shovel from behind his back. Daniel shouted, "Max, N.O." But the dog took the blow. It hit his side hard, throwing him into the dirt. He yelped in pain, but he did not stay down. He staggered back to his feet, body trembling, and positioned himself between Mark and Daniel again. Daniel's vision blurred with anger. Mark lifted the shovel again. "You should have died the first time, Mutt." That one sentence explained everything. The dog was not digging out of instinct, not out of confusion, not out of grief. He had survived an attack and came back to lead them to the graves. Daniel drew his weapon. "Drop it," Mark chuckled, and charged. It happened fast. The shovel swung. The dog leaped. Daniel fired. One gunshot echoed through the forest. Mark collapsed to his knees, dropping the shovel, clutching his shoulder. Not dead, but no longer a threat. The dog collapsed too. Daniel's weapon fell from his hand as he dropped to the ground beside him. "Buddy, hey, stay with me." His voice broke. "Come on, you are the bravest boy I've ever seen. Do not close your eyes." The dog whimpered softly. His breaths were shallow. His body curled into Daniel's lap. Backup arrived seconds later, sirens flashing through the trees, officers spreading out, paramedics rushing in. Mark was cuffed, dragged away, screaming curses into the night. But Daniel did not hear any of it. All he heard was the dog's weak breathing. "Give me a medic over here now," Daniel shouted. A paramedic knelt beside him, checking the wound. "He's alive," the medic said, "but he needs a hospital, animal trauma unit." Immediately, Daniel exhaled shakily, relief flooding him. They rushed the dog to the vehicle. As the doors closed, Daniel whispered, "You save her life. You saved all their lives. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and warm blankets. The little girl, whose name they now knew was Emily Carter, was recovering quickly. Traumatized but safe. Doctors said if the dog had not kept her warm through the storm, she would not have survived the night. Daniel visited her room. Emily looked up from her coloring book. "Is he okay?" she whispered. Daniel smiled. "He's fighting, just like you." She nodded, gripping her stuffed bear tighter. "My hero," she whispered. "Mine too," Daniel said softly. Daniel walked in carefully. The dog lay on a small padded bed, bandages wrapped around his ribs, and 4-line ran from his leg. His breathing was slow but steady. His tail thumped once when he saw Daniel. Just once. "Hey, buddy." Daniel knelt beside him, gently rubbing his neck. "You did something no human could do. You protected a child you didn't even know. You led us to the truth. You solved a case that would have been buried forever." The dog's eyes softened, full of pain, but full of understanding. Daniel took a deep breath. "I talked to the shelter. After everything you've been through, you're not going back there." The dog blinked. "You're coming home with me." The tail thumped again, twice now, and for the first time in days, Daniel smiled fully. Dozens of officers, families, and townspeople gathered at the cemetery. New markers stood beside the old graves. Victims finally identified. Cases finally closed. Emily stood beside Daniel, holding his hand tightly. The dog sat proudly on his other side, bandages removed, fur cleaned, wearing a new blue collar with a small metal tag. "Hero." The girl bent down and hugged him. "Thank you," she whispered into his fur. The dog licked her cheek gently, tail moving with slow warmth. This time he was not digging. He was healing. That night, as Daniel sat on his porch with the dog curled beside him, he looked up at the stars. "You changed everything," he murmured. "Not because you're a dog, but because you have the kind of heart most people only dream of." The dog lifted his head, pressing it against Daniel's chest. In that quiet moment, Daniel finally understood. Sometimes heroes do not carry badges. Sometimes they do not speak. Sometimes they walk on 4 paws and dig through the dirt, not to bury the past, but to uncover the truth. And sometimes the greatest detectives are covered in